So I'm in Rome right now, and I am actually making a recording of a
Mm.
ballet with the radio orchestra here, and it's actually going to be on the radio. But
Okay.
I'm recording a ballet by Maurice Jarre, Notre Dame de Paris, and for us English speakers, we know that story as The Hunchback of Notre Dame,
Mm.
and I'm making it, and then the Rome Ballet will be creating a streaming version of it with this soundtrack essentially that I am conducting and preparing. And
Oh, wow.
you know, it's a huge orchestra that plays for this piece. So right now, with social distancing, I don't think we could get the whole orchestra any place and a ballet company, et cetera, to do it all at
Mm.
once, all together, so to speak.
Mm. But how are you doing it now with the big orchestra? Do you have to be
Well,
2 meters apart?
Well, they certainly aren't 2 meters apart. The wind players, I think perhaps are. They are very far apart from each other.
Mm.
And the string players seem to be about maybe about a meter, maybe a meter and a half, maybe. But
Okay.
so what they've done is the orchestra pit is raised up to stage level, and so we are sitting on the orchestra pit and the entire stage, going all the
Oh,
way to
okay.
the back. And this is one of these stages, you know, that has a rake to it. So it goes up like this, right? Which is actually very convenient for what we're trying to do with the orchestra. And this piece uses almost 100 musicians, believe it or not.
Wow. Mm.
Indeed.
Yeah. But how do you find this? Do you find it difficult to get this unity, or do you just get your mind around it to get it?
Well, it certainly, the distance poses some problems, you know, this is for sure the case. It's obviously not as easy as when you're sitting next to each other. And the music is very, very rhythmic. It's by the French film composer, not only film, but very famously for film, Maurice Jarre, who wrote Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago and other famous film scores. And this ballet, which comes from 1964, is you know, it's very rhythmic and lots of meter changes all over the place. So of course it's a certain sort of challenge, but the orchestra is very, very fine, and everybody's working very hard to try to make it all work. So we just do. The one of the hardest things though is conducting like this, and then using a microphone to give instructions. So I
Oh,
wear
I
the
see.
mask, actually I wear 3 masks, and I have a microphone to talk to the orchestra because of course with the mask on, you can't be heard very well, even if you're, you know, down the street at the kiosk or something, let alone trying to be heard by 100 people on a huge stage.
Yeah. But how don't you use when you conduct? Don't you use also facial expression, or not facial? But you know that
Well,
in your,
of
yeah.
course, of course.
But do you find
Communicate.
it difficult with
It's
the
all about
mask?
communication.
Mm.
You know, it is, you obviously we lose quite a bit. I said I feel like I have, you know, my third arm tied behind my back, since I can't really, you know, particularly I find it when it's quite a habit for me to breathe for the wind players when they come in, take the breath with them and whatever. It's just totally something that's part of naturally what I do. And it wasn't very long that I was doing it. I realized, oh wow, they can't see that. So okay,
Mm.
but you know, it of course has its difficulties. But you know, you just like, you know, show me the day in life in which there aren't difficulties. These are just
Mm.
the particular ones we have right now.
Yeah, I also have wonder now that when we talk about this, if maybe musicians also now just think, you know, let's do it the best with the best possibilities, you know, let's just
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
get it over, you know, and get it across and do it. Is that feeling?
Yeah, everyone is of course extraordinarily professional, you know. This isn't like trying to convince everybody to keep their mask on in the bus or something, you know. Everyone really wants to be doing the best job with anything they can do. I mean, that's what separates great orchestras, great ballet companies, great opera companies from sort of mediocre ones, is that everybody is always trying to do their best, regardless of what the situation brings, regardless of what difficulties there are. So it's these kind of things aren't just a matter of having great talent or whatever. It's really a matter of trying to always do your best. And like I say, that's the defining quality of great ensembles.
I actually, in the time that I photographed all the artists here in Vienna, this actually went through my mind. I don't know if you can call it a skill that they develop, but it's almost as if they, you as artists, it's this self-motivation, this overcoming obstacles, this, finding a solution, get on with it, all these things I sort of got from them, from how we would speak about this dire situation they were in, especially in like May, June, everybody were really trying to motivate themselves, and then we would speak about this, and then the moment they get in that window, it's like they've given a stage, they just do it. And I've got critics who said that I make them smile. I never made them smile. I never asked them to smile. They just gave these pictures to me, and this kept me thinking, wow, these people are just magnificent. They just can overcome things and just do and get together, and yeah. So exactly what you're saying to me now about this orchestra, this is fascinating.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to put artists into some special group of people, I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit too much of that in any event. That's what we do. Other people do other things. And right now, the most special people in the world are doctors and scientists who are finding the way out of this. And those are really the people I go, okay, wow, you guys are really solving this. I mean, if you think about this, Petra, that we first started hearing about this whole thing about 13 and a half, 14, almost 14 months ago, mid-January last year. And that already by now, they have developed a vaccine, and millions of people around the world, probably tens of millions all around the world all put together, now have taken this vaccine, and we're on the way to solving this. My gosh, when I think of the dedication to solving the problem that those people demonstrate, well, that inspires me. And so I think, well, how can I, how could I, be crying about, oh, woe is me, or anything like this? And the other thing too, I think everybody is always very happy nowadays to be able to have any sort of contact, because one feature of this time has been that we've all been very isolated from each other, right? And so it's a great time. But if there is anything to artists and so forth, I think it is just that we are those who are maybe have a certain level of ability. that inherently means that you are a problem solver. How do I play this piece? How do I paint that picture? How do I dance this step? How do I sing this aria? All of that is solving a problem that we all start with that idea as a small child. How do we solve this problem? And that certainly is something that, you know, if you're, I think a lot of folks going to school and whatever, you know, school is just about, you know, learning facts, learning things, et cetera, memorizing and so forth. But if you're involved in one of these other disciplines, then trying to solve the problem gets into your DNA right from the very start. So maybe there's something in that.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe that. But tell me, in America, how was it for you with the lockdown?
Oh, well, you know, there was, wow, that's a big question. I will tell you that my wife and I, we did something absolutely crazy during this lockdown. Absolutely insane. When, you know, as people know this little detail of our private life, they're always saying, oh my gosh, are you guys nuts? We said, well, a little bit for sure. And that is, we moved houses, and we didn't move across town, we moved across the country. And what, you know, there are a lot of reasons for that. One of the main ones being that I had the time. Which in normal time we wouldn't have the time to move, and my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, she lives in a town where coincidentally I conduct, or maybe it's not such a coincidence, maybe I got interested in that orchestra because my mother-in-law was living there. That's one of the reasons I first looked at it. And my wife's family is the rest of the family, sisters and their kids and so forth and so on, are all sort of in the area. And this, you know, this whole pandemic did give us pause to think about some bigger pictures of life. And certainly one of the pictures that we had right in that moment was that my wife's 87-year-old mother was living in her senior living apartment by herself in this building with all kinds of other seniors, and everybody just in their little apartment, and nobody coming in and nobody going out. And so we thought, well, this isn't really a great picture. And how would this look down the line if this were to come again, or if it would be, you know, if it wouldn't have an end in sight, like now, thank goodness it does. And so we thought about a lot of things, and we eventually decided that summa summarum, it would be easier for us to go there and bring my mother-in-law in to live with us. And so we found a house, and we've done that. And so mom is now living with us, and that's really great for her and great for us. And so we just sort of readjusted our living situation, so to speak.
That's amazing. That's great that you've done that. Yeah. I think this is,
well, like I said, you know, and I got to tell you, moving was so much work. Because you know, we lived in one of these well, we still live in one, but we lived in one of these American houses where you know, you have lots more room than if you're in an apartment, of course, right? And one of the things that you have a lot of in the house that we lived in, and we didn't really properly appreciate it, we had a lot of storage space. A lot of storage space. I'm really bad with the calculations between square feet and square meters. But oh my gosh, I almost want to do it on my phone while I'm talking to you. But anyway,
go ahead.
We had so anyway, so we had so much storage space. And the thing about storage space is that you will absolutely fill it up, right?
Yeah.
If you've got the room for stuff, you will find a way. You will just go, oh yeah, I need that thing, and who cares about that other thing I have? I'll just stick it down there. Okay, so we had about 150 square meters of storage.
Wow.
Right, just to put stuff, right, and over the 20, right, exactly, it's crazy, right, and so over the 20 years we lived in that house, we put a lot of stuff in those 150 square meters. So sorting through all of that, what are we keeping? What are we throwing away? Da 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 da. What are we moving? All of this was a whole lot of stuff, and also I have again, I'm bad with my conversions from feet to meters, but nevertheless, a full-size concert grand piano in my living room. So the same size piano that you would see if you went to a concert hall and saw somebody playing a concerto with an orchestra. And so that's also a big thing, and that has to be dealt with. And yeah, so anyway, so that was all a big job. And then moving into a new house was also a big project. And all the boxes, suddenly you've got all your stuff to deal with, but then you have all these boxes. You've moved around the world, right?
Yeah,
and so you're just like, oh my gosh, it was such a job. So anyway, the only time I could ever do such a thing is when everything was completely shut down. So there's an old one of those sayings that we have in America, that you come back to school in the fall and say, the teacher asks you, what did you do on your summer vacation? Well, so for me, it'll be, what did you do on your COVID shutdown?
Oh,
that
okay.
is, I moved houses and unpacked and unpacked a lot of boxes. That's what I did.
Okay. But I think many people actually decluttered and cleaned their houses and things like that. So I think and also moving is also what you do then, because then you realize all the things you have and then sort that out and take whatever you think is necessary. And then when you unpack on the other side, you think, wow, did I really move this here as well?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and one thing that I have done a lot of over the years is I'm a big fan of mid-century furniture, and virtually everything in our house is from this mid-century era, from the middle 40s up through the mid 60s, and so and in particular, I've had quite a thing for chairs. So and the house we used to live in had lots of little places where you could just stick 2 chairs here, maybe with a table between, and maybe okay, you sit down and at a party some guests would sit there and have a drink and talk, or just some random chair sitting in some place. And I could always find a place for these in the house. And if I didn't have a place, well, I just put something that was in the house, I'd put it in the basement, in that 150 square meter storage space. I just put that down there and put the new thing there. And so I still haven't dealt with all of my sorting through all of my chairs.
Okay.
At the moment, at the moment, it almost looks like a furniture store, but
okay.
I'm working on it.
Oh, okay. Well, at least it was a not a time where you can really sit and just feel desperate about things. You just had something new to look forward to and so on, because probably many of your projects were cancelled. I mean, I think if I only think of what you did here in Vienna.
Oh yeah, no, 2000. I tell you, 2020 was going to be one of the busiest years I've ever had in my career, and I've had some busy years. There's lots of really exciting projects in lots of exciting places. Not the least of which would have been the final stretch of performances in Vienna of Manuel de Gries tenure as director and the final big season gala. And this was something that of course, oh my gosh, my heart was completely wrapped up in all of that, with all the time I've conducted there, 25 years. And so that was really, that was the hardest thing to lose, actually. Everything was hard to lose, but to really lose that particular thing, that was really, that was difficult. And of course, that brought a great deal of sadness. But then, just once it was, okay, it was, you just have to accept it and see what's going to happen. And then, I thought, I decided sort of for myself, well, until I'm active again as a conductor or something, I'm just going to pretend like I'm having a year of early retirement, and then I'll just go back to work when it's all over. So, okay, fine, enjoy it. Sit in front of the TV and watch some of my favorite science fiction television and movies, and just kind of enjoy that, right? Enjoy the free time, because it was there. There was nothing to do with it except enjoy it, right? And so I just tried to keep myself in that sort of frame of mind. But because I am music director of a couple orchestras, I did have a great deal of administrative work to do, because we kept trying to go, okay, what are we going to do? And so we have done a lot of small concerts and performances, and I've been playing the piano a whole lot more than I have in years, because if we're doing a small performance or chamber music, well, then it seems like a natural place for me to be is at the piano. And so, because maybe not all the staff is there to do everything, I've been doing a lot of administration that I wouldn't normally do, which is also fine. So I've been keeping quite busy as well as moving and enjoying a year of retirement. But now it seems like perhaps the retirement phase is hopefully going to be over, and slowly, peu à peu, we'll get back to things being a little bit more normal. We hope.
But in America, the orchestras, how did you have to motivate them, or did they do their own thing?
Ah, yes. So orchestras in America, we have virtually no subsidy, or as my German-speaking friends say, subvention at all. And so there is no, as we say, safety net for orchestras or orchestra musicians at all. And so it's a very difficult situation there, and it's a very different situation as opposed to here to Rome, for instance, where they are doing stuff, and the fact that they are making films, if you will, instead of performances is of course not good, but still they are able to do that, and so that's very, very different in America. How should I say it? There are other things too, so for instance, I've noticed many times, or oftentimes, when the Vienna Philharmonic is playing a concert and it's being streamed, and I know from members of the orchestra that they have all of this testing going on right before they rehearse, and so forth and so on. And that is, of course, possible to be organized in a way there that's just unthinkable in America. There are many, many ways in which America is still the Wild West, and this is one of them. And I don't have to tell you about how the most of the past 12 months have been led in America.
Oh yeah.
So nothing just more to say about that. So it's a very difficult situation. So what we are able to do is put together small performances with small groups of people, and there's there's also just so many things are different between America and Europe. So for instance, for instance, it'll be said here, okay, everybody has to wear masks. Fine, everybody will wear a mask. In America, you've seen the news, that's still a big discussion. It's a big discussion again in some states. Whether that is infringing upon someone's freedom. So you have that on the one hand. I think you also have, I think Americans are always very, how should I say it? That it doesn't, I don't mean it really as a big compliment, I just mean it as an observation. That they're very interested in finding a way to solve the problem, at least in their minds. And so for that, the way to solve the problem is that, for instance, no wind players are near anybody. If someone's playing their clarinet or flute, they're doing it in their own home. They're not doing it anywhere near anybody else. Maybe a little bit has begun to be, but on a huge, enormous stage, maybe there'll be 6 wind players or something, right? So and I oftentimes in all my years, and it's now, oh my gosh, it's about 30 years that I've been living and working in Europe. There is a certain, I think, and I find this to be very healthy, a certain, I think, an attitude that is just sort of in the DNA from having these horrible world wars right on the very soil, right where I'm sitting, right where you're sitting. That puts things a little bit more into a certain sort of perspective. This is really terrible, but right? And there's, and in America, maybe there's a little bit more of, oh my gosh, the world is going to end unless we do X, Y, or Z. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say, but yeah.
No, I know what.
It's difficult.
Yeah. No, because I think I've spoken to a few artists in New York as well, and also to some of the students at Juilliard. And I've spoken to people in Philadelphia and so on, Denver. And so I know America is bigger than that, but it's like, everybody's also saying the same thing, that it's also that it's not state funded, and private organizations fund these orchestras, but also that they feel that artists are not valued.
Well, it's that's a difficult thing to say, and I wouldn't use those words. I wouldn't characterize it like that, because I know a good many people who value artists very, very much. And certainly, and I think America is really quite an example of that, because people have to value art so much that they have to actually give their own money to make it happen. They have to make that donation of $100, $1,000, $10,000, $20,000, $100,000, $1 million, whatever their sense is. So those people value art very, very much. And it's, so you don't want to say this. What you certainly can say is that in the government level, art is not perceived as something which the government should make sure exists. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That, I think, absolute fact. That is a fact. And certainly the fact that so many people continue to value art in Europe is because the government supports it and makes it available. And all of those people that work, you know, over there at the Staatsoper, that work in those offices in the public relations and the publicity and you know, young adult engagement and so forth and so on. Those people are all working very hard to keep art in the mainstream of society, and the government funds their jobs to do that, right?
Yeah.
So you see, that's where the big difference comes. So indeed, it is very complex. There's a certain philosophy, and obviously I don't subscribe to it at all. But there's a certain philosophy that if the government funds culture too much, let's say music, right? Because museums are, again, a slightly different animal. If the government funds music too much, orchestras, opera, ballet, whatever, then that is the government telling you what music you should like or listen to. Okay? And certainly I think that is crazy, and I think a lot of people who aren't inside that particular mindset think that's a little crazy, and certainly those of us who know something else and know how wonderful that is see that a little bit differently. But that's, you know, that's part of this American psyche that exists in certain parts of the countries of, well, you can't tell me to wear a mask because it's not in the Constitution that you can tell me to wear a mask, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, America's it's a wild place in a lot of ways, still, very, very much. But part of that, a huge part of that I always try to remind my friends in other parts of the world is because outside of the big cities, there is such incredible distance between people. I mean, just I mean, it's you know, the town where I live now, once I leave that town, or maybe, right, and it's a small town, I sit in the car, you know, maybe at least 2 hours till I get to any other place that you would call a town. And you know, so that's an entirely different perspective on distance, and people and societies become very, very different depending upon their distance to each other. That is why the big cities are still, and even in the big cities, I think I really have to limit it to New York, San Francisco, perhaps Boston and Chicago, where people still live in the center of the city, right? So many cities, people move out of the cities, right? And, you know, just apropos what I'm doing right now, I had to go down to Detroit last week. Was that just last week? I think it was just last week. Anyway, maybe it was the week before. Anyway, I had to go down to Detroit because this idea for me to come to Rome and do this came very last minute. So I had to drive down to Detroit 4 hours to go to the Italian consulate and do some paperwork to get the work visa. Fine. So I'm in downtown Detroit, Motown, right? Motor City, as it used to be called back in the day. And it's and I mean, of course, everything's a little different with COVID, but it's kind of a bit like a ghost town inside the center of Detroit because, you know, practically no one lives there anymore. So this is really all going to affect how society reacts to itself and to each other very, very, very much, right?
Yeah, because what I heard, for example, is I spoke to a conductor who grew up in Texas, and she told me that, you know, the schools there, for example, there were a lot of opportunities for music and and this is where she got inspired to do music, and they had a wonderful teacher. But
yes,
then she also
I have
said,
the same story from Indiana, in school, teacher,
yeah.
not the family at all. Yes.
And but then, you know, then she said also that or somebody else told me that it depends on where you are in America. You know, it's not, it's, and this is what you're saying now, it's these distances and these out of city. But then,
Right.
you know, I spoke to a violinist who also told me that, for example, now with the Met that's been closed for this time, and also the orchestra there, the some members of the orchestra, you know, have to move out of the city because there's no
Sure.
funding for them,
Sure.
and things like that. And also there were also what I've heard from two people already, from musicians that are selling their instruments,
Mm.
you know. And
That's
this
of
is
course.
New York. This is, yeah.
Well, I mean, if the Met is closed, then the Met is closed. And if they are closed in the way they are closed, which means they're closed and they're not paying anybody anything, you know, I absolutely have no business getting into the politics of the Met. And so I would just say that's that. It's an incredibly huge operation. And, you know, the one thing that yeah, it's you know, if it just can't, they just can't, they don't have the money to pay them, make the payroll, right? And well, not, and still do something when it opens up again, right? Because they don't have any government support. So, you know, it's a super difficult situation. And of course, Manhattan's a phenomenally expensive place to live, right? So hopefully they'll be able to get back to doing stuff, doing performances, and before too long, too much time has passed. But I want to come to another little point here, that you know, something that is, I don't think people who aren't from America, or even sometimes people who have even lived in America, I don't think one thing that is understood quite so well is how much the country of the United States is not a country in the way that Austria is a country, in the way that France is a country, in the way that Germany, etc., etc. It is much more like the United States is the equivalent of the EU, and New York is Germany, and Illinois is, I don't know what other country. You know, Texas is certainly not Italy, but you know, Spain maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I don't. You know, you can't draw any cultural comparisons, but in the fact that they are each very, very different places, each with their incredibly separate identities and their separate governments and their separate ways of doing things. And so I think this is a fact which doesn't get talked about enough when commentators from outside the United States are talking about the United States. The EU is the United States, right? I think there was a country who just left the EU not long ago, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Right? Because they didn't like the stuff that the big guys were saying about the whole European Union. Well, we have states saying that all the time. We even had a big war about that 150, 60 years ago. And it's still something, you know, you will still have crazy politicians in certain states saying, we're going to secede from the Union, we're going to leave the United States. And, you know, this is mostly, of course, just silliness. But it is a little bit of an attitude. And I can tell you, because I am from right where the border between the North and the South was during the Civil War. And the Southern states, to a large extent, still resent the fact they lost.
Oh, I see.
You know, I mean, there is a huge contingent of folks in the Southern states that, you know, really wish that they weren't being governed by a government sitting in Washington, D.C. that doesn't want to have some politicians thousands of miles away telling them exactly what they should do. So, like I say, Europe just got a little taste of this with Great Britain. And of course, you know, you didn't have to have a war to have Great Britain leave the EU, thank goodness. Now, right? What if the EU had come up as an idea? You know, it's unthinkable, but you know, if it had come up as an idea 180 years ago, you know, it's easy to imagine there might have been some wars back then about whether you were going to stay in it or leave it. So, like I say, so this really significant point is really very, very important. That's why we have such different laws from one state to another. And so many times over the years, my friends have said, how can that be that the people here and the people there? I go, you got to remember, it's like a collection of different countries.
But do you think musicians then in America, because this is also, I find it very interesting that the different musicians I speak to from different states, they say that, I mean, they say there's things that's similar, but also, you know, this is this thing for some say, yes, the education system is good for music or for arts or so on. But do you think in a way musicians in America are more so business orientated and self-efficient and knowing how to deal with these situations because they don't get so much help from the state? Do you think they are more resilient in this time?
Well, gosh, I don't know. They're certainly more used to, you know, I mean, well, look, it's extraordinarily exceptional if you can go to a university and, you know, study violin or flute and finish that and then go someplace and get a full-time job doing that. Okay. That's extraordinarily exceptional, right? And also in America, we don't have mandatory retirement age, right? So there isn't the same sort of turnover of people in orchestras. It's totally normal to have many people in an orchestra be in their 70s, right? There in the New York City Ballet Orchestra, there was very famously a violist who was, I think, 83 before he retired. So the jobs don't come open as often, and there aren't as many jobs. And by the way, New York City Ballet is not a full-time job either. So just to point that out. There aren't so many opportunities. So yes, everyone is there. Maybe there are more people who are used to trying to just figure out some way to make something happen. But I wouldn't say that just, oh, they're more resourceful. They just maybe have, you know, more practice at it than some of my European friends. You know.
Do you think in this time, is there a loud enough voice in America from the artists that will make the government listen, or that they will make some sort of a change, bring some sort of change that you know, say, for example, that all over America, the education will be, I mean, you said now that it's different states, but that the government could enforce some sort of education system, or that there can be some sort of protection or some sort of funding for more arts. Because I mean, there are in the whole of America, there must be millions of artists now speaking about this, or you know, saying something or asking for something. So do you think this could be some change that happens in America at the moment, or after this pandemic?
I don't mean it as a pessimist, but no is my answer. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't see this inspiring a fundamental change in the attitudes about the arts, because we have this ping pong system in America, right? We'll be going one political direction, and then another 4-8 years we'll go a completely different political direction. So long-term things are very difficult to imagine or talk about. And is it possible that some campaign could be mounted that might have some degree of success with maybe increasing the amount of money that maybe goes to the arts? Well, perhaps, but it would be absolutely minuscule. That's a fact, and perhaps maybe some societal change will come. But I don't see that, and one of the reasons I say that also is that I've almost never seen anything encompass the whole country in a way. It's just too big. It's all too different. The places it's going to be, it's all going to be very, very local. And certainly coming out of the pandemic, finances for everybody, right, are, it's going to take a while for things to reestablish themselves. And so, when lots of people, and I just don't mean, yes, there are millions of artists, but there are many more millions of people who aren't artists who don't have food to eat, right? And so that's one of the old arguments there, right? So it's it's difficult, but like I say, I think there's a wonderful book by Charles Dickens, written, and it's a collection. It's essentially two short books, big essays, depending on how you want to talk about them, called American Notes. And they have to do with two trips that Dickens made to America, once in the 1840s and once in the 1860s. And it's his observations of America at that point in time, which in neither case was it even yet 100 years old as a country, right? And so much of what he writes about in the 1800s, I recognize in my country today, to this day.
Really?
Oh, yes,
Amazing.
absolutely. It's one of the most fascinating reads. If anyone wants to try to understand America, and I always deeply recommend it to them, because that historical perspective of that English speaker, so he wasn't, someone, who was maybe German or Italian and he has that language sort of that, no, he was an English speaker, and tons of the people there had come from his country, right? It was founded by his people, right? And so his observations, written in his incredible way, his incredible descriptive powers, his incredible, Dickens, he just perceived things on such a deep level and could translate that into words. So oftentimes when we think about, Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, Bleak House, all of the rest of this, we think of, sort of BBC period costume drama, beautiful films on TV. But if you go back to the words that were written by that man at that point in time, they're really powerful. I mean, it's a reason why he remains one of the most read and most loved authors ever. And so anyway, so his powers of describing America in the 1800s, just incredible. And I think that gives a fantastic window into the country that it has become, with all of its great things and all of its not so great things, right? Just like any country, yes?
Yeah.
It just is exceptionally large. But again, like I tell you, I think it's better to think of America, the United States. I keep saying America because I'm so used to that, but that's of course not what it's called. The United States. I think it's really best to think of the United States as the first attempt at the EU, but in the you know, I mean, and then I think a lot of things become clearer, right?
Yeah. Listen, I just want to ask you about this project that you're doing in Rome now.
Yeah.
Tell me, when you say it's about 100, the orchestra is about 100 musicians, but
yeah,
this is now first time back for you leading an orchestra since lockdown.
Yes.
So how did that feel? Did you have some emotion, or is it all these masks and things that's taking away from that?
Well, there's a lot about it that makes it an incredibly unique experience. For one thing, it's the first time I've been in Rome. I've been in Milan quite a bit, in Verona and in Napoli, but this is the first time I'm in Rome. So I'm in this city for the first time. I've never worked with this orchestra. I've never been in this opera house before. So that's an added element to it. That would be very different, say, if I were in Vienna right now doing a piece. That would be, I'm seeing all my old friends again and we're going to play together again. So I'm meeting all of these people for the first time, and I only know what people look like from here up, right? So there's that too, which is a little bit, certainly that's strange. And this project came up very late. And so it was really, I got the call, almost 2 weeks ago, and it was only clear that everything would work out for me to come do it about 10 days ago. And it's a very complicated piece, and that I got a PDF of it before I arrived, but I got the score. Actually, there wasn't time to send it, so I actually got the score when I arrived Wednesday night. So basically, I then was just inside the score, writing, marking, learning, restudying, and then doing my rehearsals, which started already on Friday evening. And so there hasn't been too much time to sit and think about, oh wow, it's been, after the pandemic, it's just going to do my work that I love, and these are the kind of strange conditions that I'm doing it in right at this moment, and maybe they're stranger than other strange conditions, but hey, if you've been doing something as long as I've been doing this, you've experienced a lot of strange conditions. Believe me.
Oh, that is so lovely that you say that.
Well, that's really how I look at it, and and for me, that's just the way I feel about it, and I feel very lucky to be doing it. I'm thrilled to be doing it. But it's
But this connection also now between the orchestra members, they are the orchestra, they know each other, or are they also musicians? Oh, they know each other, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Are the orchestra.
Okay, so with the masks, it's because I think that's the thing that people sometimes say when they or I hear, for example, when it's a professor teaching new students and they are masked or they on Zoom, and then there's not that personal contact, or not that getting to know each other, but they know each other.
That's also very unfortunate, absolutely. But you also have to remember that my means of communication is this.
Of course, yeah.
And so this guy doesn't have to wear a mask.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's I feel it when I have to talk and I have to use this microphone and speak through all of this paper in front of my face, and I won't say that's fun at all. That's terrible. It's terrible. I
Yeah.
hate talking through the mask and the microphone, and oh my gosh, of course that's horrible. So as soon as I'm done saying, then okay, let's get back and we do this, and and that's that, right?
Well, Kevin, I must say I've watched you many times from backstage, and you are extremely physical. How do you say when you conduct? Yeah. So I'm sure you can overcome the
I've heard that.
mask. But I love that that energy. But now talking about this energy, that also comes from the audience. Do you, and that you won't have now because it's a recording. Yeah.
So
do you think that will be different for you?
Sure, but at the same time, we do rehearsals all the time with no audience. So yes, there is a certain, of course, the audience, not having the audience, that's enormous. I don't want to say that it's not. It's absolutely enormous. But for me, always though, once I've done my little, I always feel like that, those little toy, those little birds that they have that like dip into the little thing, the little thing of water. I always feel like that's what I'm doing when I do the bound thing and whatever. And so in any event, always once I turn around, it's just all about the people I'm playing with, right? The people I'm playing with down here with the orchestra, up there on stage, if they're singing, if they're dancing. It's all about us anyway in that moment. And then when it's done, hopefully people will have enjoyed it and they can share their joy with us while we shared our joy of making the music and ballet and opera with them. So at this moment, we don't have that joy back to us, but we will certainly have our joy in making the art with each other. And nothing really can diminish that for me.
Yeah. No, that's true. But I would love to see you again in Vienna anyway, doing your thing as only you can do it.
No, that's very kind. I hope to see Vienna again myself. Absolutely.
But Kevin, I know you've moved house now and you are settled with all your chairs, but is there some hobby you started or something except moving house that you did over this time?
Well, I suppose one of the main things I've done, and I don't want to exaggerate it and say that I've done a whole lot of it, but I've played the piano a lot more than I have in years.
Oh, okay.
Which has been very nice, as a matter of fact. It's been really great to. As a buddy of mine said, the other day to me, he said, I'm reconnecting with my first love, the piano. Oh, yeah. And that's really great. And actually, I hope I can spend more time actually producing sound myself in the coming months, the coming years. I had forgotten how much I enjoy it, because so oftentimes one of the things that I have done over the years is back when I was a kid in college, I started doing, I call it a circus act, of playing and conducting the Rhapsody in Blue from George Gershwin from the piano, right? And so this is something that people always say, no, do you play the piano? And I go, no, I can play Rhapsody in Blue, but I don't play the piano. And that's always been my joke. And always, that is always come up as, okay, that's going to be the third week in February, and the week before you're in Vienna, the week after you're in Paris, and it's always been kind of stuck in. So there's usually been more stress than joy about doing it, to be honest, because I'm doing other things. I'm not doing this for several hours every day. It's just not possible in the full conducting career for me. and I need to be able to do it a whole lot to feel very comfortable with it. I'm not like some geniuses who don't need to do that. I need to work anyway. So I've actually found more pleasure in playing in the past year than I have in decades, and really exciting. That's really thrilling. I really love that. And hopefully as time goes on, like I say, I'll be able to spend more time doing that and perhaps get better and do some more things at it. And that's one thing about the new house is it's got a great acoustic for piano. Fantastic.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
So then
Yeah.
it's perfect for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very high ceiling in the living room where the piano is, and it's a wooden ceiling. And the floors are wood as well. So it really resonates and makes a great, great, great sound.
Oh, that's wonderful. Kevin, what is your wish for when this is all over?
Well, I think my biggest wish is that we can all appreciate how phenomenally lucky we are to be alive and to be able to do anything, whether it's always the thing we want to do or not, is really kind of beside the point. If you're able to leave your house and do anything and feel relatively safe doing it, then I hope that's something we all will be able to appreciate for longer than 2 days. Because as human beings, I think as a species are very, we move on, right? And sometimes moving on is great. Sometimes moving on, makes you not properly appreciate everything that you have in the right way. So that's what I really hope.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, and I think sometimes we forget about the health issue. About the fact that we are healthy if we are safe and if we are healthy and if we can do the things that we love to do, and we shouldn't lose perspective of that. Yeah.
Right. We've never had a time in our lifetimes where, when you left the house, you felt like, okay, I could be having a brush with death today, right? And that's been a thought that's, I think, been in most of our minds for most of the past year. And, and I hope it's not too long before we can leave that fear behind, Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your time.
It's great to talk.
And from Rome, and I wish you all the best with this, with the orchestra, with this, with all your, with the little obstacles that you will overcome with your baton. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See you again, and my big love to Vienna.
Yeah, see you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.